Hey guys, a very requested topic. Just gonna go over the biggest mistakes raid leaders make. Not any more complicated than that. Make sure to like and subscribe if you guys enjoy it. Thanks. All right, the number one mistake most raid leaders make is talking too much. That can mean, a lot of things, I guess, but I'm gonna stick to specifically meaningless callouts just for the sake of talking. You might hear your raid leader be like, don't die here, do big damage, stuff like that. It just doesn't resonate with people. One of my biggest tips for people setting up their UI is to come up with custom sounds to hear things that are important to them. If you have the same, bigwigs or DBM, like submarine sounds like bings and bongs on every mechanic, that starts becoming white noise to you. Now, if you're a raid leader and you start just saying the same things over and over again without much meaning behind it, you become white noise to your raiders. You don't need to say everything, but when you talk, you want people in your raid to be thinking critically when you're speaking. It's very, very important. You do not want to become something that they can ignore. There is a time and a place to say don't die or do big damage. Like, for example, on Sun King, if you're coming up to specifically the damage shield on the shade at either 45% or 10%, that could be a point where you say do big damage, and that might mean oh, your healers heal that. And they're like, okay, I'm lava bursting the boss, I'm spamming DPS abilities, stuff like that. But if you say it constantly, people are like, they're not gonna, no raider has ever heard someone just on a single target boss has heard a raid leader say do damage here, and they're like, oh man, I'm fucking owning now. No one's done that. And it's the same thing with don't die. However, don't die is very good if used sparingly. I use don't die. But I'm very impassioned when I'm saying it, and my raiders know I'm not just gonna randomly say don't die. If I say that, it means one thing. You could do 0 damage for the rest of this fight and we'll still kill it, as long as for the next 10-15 seconds you just run around, take your hands off of your damage buttons, and just stay alive. So if you never say it, when you do say it, it matters. If you say it all the time, it doesn't. The second biggest mistake raid leaders make is actually not helping themselves as much as they can with their UI. What I mean by that is, this is true for raiders too, but you want to assign very specific sounds to abilities that happen, and you want to have big text weak auras or bar weak auras, whatever you're used to looking at that's different from your normal boss mod, to kind of make it easier for you to do your job, especially if you're playing inside the raid. For example, if you're relying on your eyesight to see everything you want to call out, you're going to be limited in what you can do. So for me, I pick 2 really, really important mechanics per fight, and I turn off all other sounds, and I let my eyes look at, everything else that's maybe less important. But the 2 really big things, every fight, I have a big text weak aura that tells me when it's coming soon, and I have a very unique sound that's never the same as anything else on the encounter for that exact thing, and it's very loud. It can be an air horn, weak aura sounds. You guys have all used them. See, you want to do this as a player, but as a raid leader, it's even more important that you're using aural learning to just allow yourself to do more at one time. You're allowing your ears to pick up a reaction for a mechanic instead of relying on everything being your eyes. So that's true with all raiders, but I think as a raid leader specifically, your sound game in a raid specifically and weak aura game needs to be next level, because your entire job is figuring out how to play your character while fully focusing on something else, right? That's what raid leading is focusing on everyone else and playing your character in your peripheral vision. If you are able to have your ears help you along with everything else, it's just a massive, massive help. Here's a quick one. Play tank. But really, not being self-critical enough. Some of the best leaders in any industry, raid leading included, are very self-critical. It helps shape an environment to where people will be willing to admit to mistakes. If you as a raid leader make a call 50 pulls in a row, and then someone dies to it on the 51st pull where you forget to call it one time, a bad raid leader will be like, well, you should have just known to get out of that. No, the point of a raid leader is to make people not think. You're carrying them. That's your job. If you miss it, that's on you. And you know what every raider wants to hear their raid leader say? Oh, I totally screwed up that pull, my bad. Because no one cares. Everyone makes mistakes. But when they think that you should have called it, and then you kind of dance around blame, how are you ever going to expect them to make a mistake and then want to willingly admit to it and move on from it? It just fosters the environment. You have to be the role model there. Be very self-critical of yourself. And anytime there's someone else in your raid has a good strat, listen. It may not be good enough, and you may have to learn who to listen to and who not to, but definitely listen. And yeah, don't be a douche. Another one is to just be yourself. And that sounds ridiculous, but you know, I think a lot of people might see other raid environments and be like, hey, I want to sound like them. You know, this guild, people use our guild as an example. Like that guild's really good and it sounds like they have a lot of fun. But that's because that's the environment that we've fostered in our guild. It's what people here are used to. It's a comfort zone. When someone in this guild is about to pull a boss and we're like on a really, really hard mythic boss, the level of comfort is us messing around and just doing whatever. We're not even talking about the fight. And that's when we play our best because that's me. That's just who I am. I'm a clown. So like when we're raiding, it's never been able to be anything but that. It's what people are used to from me and from other people in the guild. So that just becomes natural. That's when you're comfortable. That's when you play your best. Now there's another, like I use Echo as an example, right? I watched a lot of their progression back to learn some stuff and they're completely different. Like, but they're still insanely good. Like where if you were to ask one of our players, when are you the most comfortable in a raid? It's when everyone's joking. If you were to ask one of their players, from what I saw, they're the most comfortable and they feel like they're doing the right thing when they're very, very focused, right? That could very simply be the difference between me and Scripe. That's just, I'm an absolute idiot and Scripe is like very focused and like takes it very seriously and stuff. But two guilds can have massive amounts of success and be very different in that regard. I'm only using those two as an example, just so you know that you can be yourself in a raid environment. Like any good guild situation is you being empowered to be who you are. You know, obviously lead as well as you can, obviously treat people with respect and all the other stuff we've already talked about. But it really, don't feel like you need to make your raid something it's not, because oftentimes if you're making a drastic shift, people are going to be more confused than anything else because they've grown to know what you're like. So, you know, just be you. Listen, all pug raid leaders that exist, the ratios have to stop. The 239, the 2413 or whatever it is, it's got to stop. Just get 4 healers at 20 raiders, 5 healers at 25 people, 6 healers at 30, maybe 6 healers at 25 to be safe. Just invite people who have good eye level. The ratios never mattered. All right, this is a big one. Following the meta, and not knowing why you're making the decisions you're making them. Example would be looking at us running a comp for World First, and then you're like, oh, we're just gonna run that comp because they did it. Know why we did it. Try to find out why we did it. Use like logical reasoning, like come to your own conclusion why something is good. Because most of the time, when the world first guilds are doing something, a lower ranked guild doing it later is not the same thing. In fact, almost always something different is better. So just that in general, and also that just comes along to roster decisions. Almost always guilds are made up of one thing. A bunch of different one tricks, so people who play one class and one spec potentially that are popular specs, you know, mages, hunters, and all the really popular classes. And then you have very few multi-classers. At this level, maybe there's a few more multi-classers because, you know, we have to run exact comps. But the point is, people do better when they're playing their main. Almost everyone, especially people in lower ranked guilds. So I would look at it as, when you're looking to make a comp for a fight, if you're thinking between, hey, do we want to run this, do we want to run this many things, play your best players. If you're like, do I bring in a mage or a shaman? If your LE shaman's really reliable and your mage isn't, but he's playing like this super meta spec, play your shaman, man. At that level, it's, if you're killing a boss with a video, you play your best players always. You will have the best results. That's healing comp. That's DPS comp. There are bosses where that's not true. Most notably in my memory is like N'Zoth, where you just needed a certain amount of immunities. But Blizzard actively tries to not design bosses that way. Sometimes they aren't able to. And like some bosses this raid, like, yeah, having Resto Shamans and Disc Priest, even if they're less geared, on a boss like Hungering Destroyer really, really helps. But like most every other boss can be done multiple different ways. So never be afraid of playing your best players, and don't. And if you are like, and I'm not saying this to criticize you if you want to be meta and just not run, like, yeah, if you guys are like me and you are fascinated with running the best possible comp, then do it. You can do that if you want to push yourself and be as good as you can be. That's fine. It's just usually people are doing that kind of stuff for the absolute wrong reasons. Another one, and this is short, I see some people in trade trying to recruit new players, and they'll be like looking for one new rogue or one new enhanced shaman for a raid. You can basically add any class to the two I just said. This isn't Pokemon. You're not trying to catch them all. This isn't Noah's Ark. You don't need a bunch of all things. Just pick up players that are willing to put in the time. And if you already have all the raid buffs, it actually does not matter what class you do. So just kind of get whoever you can get. This one's actually really underrated, and it's about understanding how people learn. If you've ever sat in front of a boss, either on PTR or on live, and you have sat in front of your entire raid and told them how every mechanic works for the entire fight, a 10-minute dissertation, you have to know that every single one of them has tuned out within 30 seconds and you're saying nothing. A really common learning type, especially with video gamers, is they like to learn by doing. They need to see it. Even if you tell them to watch a video over the weekend and whatever, they have to see it themselves to have any of the information really matter to them. And I know a lot of people don't do this because I see it all the time. It's like, especially people typing it out in like a pug, like obviously no one's listening to that, but like even in Discord, it's just, people just totally don't get it. What our guild does when we see a PTR boss, we explain maybe 1 to 2 super important mechanics, and then we just YOLO it. Even if your guild's not as good, you might wipe early, but at least when you start talking about mechanics, they'll have a picture to put with what you're talking about. And the last one is just a simple philosophy thing, and I have touched on it already in another video. It's how people process mistakes. I've seen it so many times where even a top guild, like a top 10 US guild or something in the past, would like get to the last phase of the boss. Like their best pull will be 30%, and then they get a 2% wipe. And then the raid leader will spend the next 15 minutes berating the player that ruined the wipe. And it's like, that's such good progress. Like your guild learned so much in that one pull, and they're gonna forget so much of it because they're all fixated on you just owning this guy in between pulls, and you're not able to build on the success you just had. Also, in the same way, you allow yourself to regress. Oftentimes, when a guild has a super, super low pull out of nowhere, it's lucky. Maybe the right mechanics went on the right people. It's really often when you get a low pull that for the next 30 minutes, you don't get back there again. Why? Because like I said, a lot of things sometimes when you have the amount of quantity and sample size of like a ton of pulls, like something like that can happen. Where if you get it into your mind where you need to be back at that point of the fight, and then you start getting really pessimistic when you don't reach there again, I feel like you're not understanding how people learn. Maybe the mechanic that 5 people get every 10 seconds in the last phase just happened to go on people who knew how to do it, and it avoided like your 10 weakest players. And then like the next couple pulls you get, those players have to learn it. A lot of times you kill a boss when your least aware player knows what's happening. So that just something to keep in mind. And again, this is the thing I've touched on before. The difference is seeing people making mistakes as an obstacle in your path rather than a member of your team you need to help personally. That mindset will change everything for you. If you find yourself getting overly mad at small mistakes, it's because you're probably not looking at it right. They're humans just like you. You make mistakes too, and just treat them with respect. All right, I could probably do a few more of these down the line. This is just stuff that usually ends up on my mind when I watch other people play. And could be some interesting stuff to think about. A lot of my viewers are not subscribed, actually almost all of them. So if you guys are enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment specifically on new videos you guys want to see, because I'm still pretty new at this. And it's been great. Thanks.